Welcome to Nobody's Business, a podcast for all those subjects we've been trained to avoid. Here's your respectfully irreverent host, Keith Shelton.
Hey, good evening, everybody. So glad you're joining us tonight. I'm Keith Shelton. I'm the ramrod around here. The famous words of Drago and McClintock. Just want to tell you we're so glad to have all you nobodies joining us tonight. We hope tonight's episode is going to be very informative for you. Before we jump into it, I do want to tell you we've got some great guests lined up for the next couple of weeks. Very interesting people. It's one of the things we love about doing our show is bringing people who have so many interesting things to say, talk about things they've done, things they've experienced as you've seen so far. So just want you to, if you would, please like, share, and subscribe. And tonight, we're going to have a special treat. We're going to be flipping the script, so to speak. Producer is going to be the moderator. And where's my sidekick, my co-pilot in crime? Where is he at? There he is.
I'm over here trying to survive this heat.
Well, JT and I are going to be the guests. We're going to be talking about a special topic. I'll let our moderator introduce the topic, but we obviously, you know, if you've been observing us for any length of time, we stay away from brand names and things like that. But what I can tell you is JT is Vice President of Development for a very large national commercial real estate development firm. And I am fortunate enough that from the time I became an attorney, there seemed to not be any time in my career that I didn't have at least one commercial real estate developer or commercial construction company as a client. So many years experience in this arena, and JT is currently employed in that arena. I am chief legal officer for that same company. And so we're going to try to give you the benefit of what we do. And so without further ado, where's our moderator?
And what not to do.
Yeah, mainly what not to do. There she is. There's our producer.
That's what I was thinking when you were saying that. This may be a what not to do in commercial real estate 101, but, you know, there's a couple of ways that you can look at this, but, you know, from a developer standpoint or from an investor standpoint, but there's kind of a basic knowledge that you need, right? You kind of have to know a few things. And a lot of people know the buzzwords that go with, you know, commercial real estate development, but maybe they hate to ask what those words really mean. So maybe we can clear up some of that for people tonight and keep. So it's been over 30 years that you've been in real estate development or had clients in it at least, right?
Exactly. And
yeah,
the thing about it is you can hear people using terms, but by the way they try to use them, you can tell they really aren't well versed in the commercial sector, and you really know that they're using terms only because they've heard them, and you know that they've heard them in certain contexts by listening and you know to the context. You can tell that most there's a lot of people who don't know what the terms actually mean. So
well, you know, JT and I have worked with you enough that our superpower is that we can watch people's faces when you're talking, and we can realize that they don't have a clue what you're talking about, and they got lost a long time ago. So we're the interpreters, right?
Yeah. When Keith and I had I'm just so used to saying Keith because in a professional setting, I try not to say dad. We had a system where I had a desk over here, he had a desk over here, and you know when he was giving his lecture, if you will, on any given topic, we had flashcards that would say, "Hey, wrap it up," or "Hey, you said that already," or
That
Hey,
horse is dead.
that horse is dead. Quit beating it. So we've learned how to pick up some things here and there working with Keith. And like I said, I got here where I am today because I definitely got a very strong foundation in the commercial real estate arena from Keith. And if anybody has any questions about anything, Keith is usually the go-to person. I just fake it till I make it. So
Yeah. Yeah. But wouldn't you say that it really is better to ask early on? A certain amount of time goes by in the conversation. It's like when you don't know the person's name. If you don't say, man, I can't remember your name. What's your name? If you don't say that,
I just say, hey, bud.
if you don't say that early enough, then you feel like you can never say it again. And so this conversation maybe will help that. I'm going to be the advocate for that guy or girl who's trying to get into this. So let's get into it a little bit. And JT, what would you say for somebody who is looking to get into commercial real estate development? What would your number one advice be there?
You just better be ready to be told no. That's one of the biggest takeaways for me when we started doing our first own deals is there's a lot of people that are going to tell you no, and if you're discouraged by that, you won't make it. You got to fight because this is a dog eat dog industry. Everybody wants to get into this. This is one of the most lucrative industries you can get into, and everyone's fighting for a piece of the pie. That if you can't withstand being told no 100 times to get the one yes, then it's not for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good advice. Keith, you deal with the contract side of it a lot. And I know people are used to looking at real estate contracts for, say, residential. They've bought a home or they've entered a contract in some other way. But what would you say were some of the special properties of commercial real estate contracts? What do you have to kind of work in there that you might not have ever thought of? Can you tell us about that?
Well, people who have bought and sold residential properties, they're used to seeing residential contracts. Every state, their board of realtors has what we call promulgated forms, and they're very standardized forms, and they work okay for residential property, but they're most of the time wholly inadequate to cover commercial settings. One of the most important things you need to make sure of in the commercial setting is you need to have had enough experience and seen enough to know what the shortcomings of a promulgated form for commercial real estate is, because there's so many things that need to be talked about, need to be covered. Generally, you're not talking about unsophisticated buyers. You're not talking to unsophisticated sellers. Most of the time, it's quite the opposite. And one of the main components of a commercial real estate contract is what's known as a free look provision. It's often referred to as a study period, a due diligence period. But what you want, because you're talking about properties that almost always involve much, much, much larger dollar volumes. You're talking about $1 million, if not multi-million-dollar price tags. You don't want to make a mistake and buy a piece of commercial property or be forced by the terms you allow in the contract to buy a piece of property only to find out that you spent $1 million for a piece of property you can't you can't make use of it the way that was your motivation for trying to buy it in the first place. It's the worst thing that can happen. Now, just an example without naming names, I had a client that bought a piece of property because a real estate agent told him that, man, that thing's perfectly zoned for a dollar store. And let's make this happen. And come to find out, if he had done his due diligence, he would have found out there's a restriction that says no dollar stores. Well, that's what the free look.
So how does that first come up? Is it in the title work? You run title to see what the property's all about? Is that where you get your first clue whether this is a piece of property you want to deal with or not?
Most people won't even know what that is.
That's
They
true.
don't even know what that word means.
That's
So
true.
backing that up, one thing that's important for when you're getting into commercial real estate deals is, number one, hire an attorney. You may think it's going to cost me money, whatever, but hire an attorney because they do a lot more in-depth research than you think they do.
Yeah, but JT, wait, don't just hire any attorney. Any an attorney that has no experience in commercial real estate is no better than the person that hired him.
You got to hire one that stayed in a Holiday Inn Express last night, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Well, something that even when you buy a house, you get what's called a title commitment, and a lot of people don't know this. They think I just go to the title office and sign title work. I don't know what that all is. Well, that title commitment tells you what's of record on your land, and it's a commitment for insurance to say this is what we'll insure over, and then here's a list of things we won't insure over because of these recorded items. And that would have been the first place that someone would have seen that there was a recorded deed restriction against a dollar store on that piece of property.
What are some of the other types of things that you would see on there that would be alarming to a potential developer of a piece of property?
You might see an easement that's running right through the middle of the property for a power line that hadn't been built yet. You might see other restrictions.
Pipeline.
Yeah, you might see a pipeline easement that's not actually physically located, but there's a pipeline easement across your property that somebody has the right to come build a pipeline at any time through there. But there's some nuances to that. But the point being is you don't just go and look at property and say, I'm fixing to do a commercial deal in here. You got to do what's called due diligence. And that's like almost step one of due diligence is getting a title company to run you a title commitment, so that you can find out what you can and can't do with the property legally, from a legal perspective.
Now,
and I'm sure there's probably sometimes. Go ahead, Keith.
Understand that's not where it has to end.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
A title commitment that has issues doesn't mean that that's the end of your efforts. Because
that's what I was going to say.
It's like JT said, if you've got a good experienced title attorney who's had experience in doing this, or you're hooked up with a developer who has had a lot of experience, they know how to solve those problems. They know how to go to these power companies and ask for, in the case of a blanket easement, where the power company has no intent of ever running a power line on that property. You just ask them for a release. I mean, there are solutions. So just because a title commitment shows up with some issues doesn't mean, that's where you stop. And the reason you need to understand that is because in urban settings, development of commercial property has been going on for many, 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 many years. And so you're not going to find virgin dirt in an urban setting. You're going to find dirt that's been looked at many times. It's going to have use restrictions on it. It's going to have zoning issues. It's going to have easement issues. Such things as sightline easements or sightline restrictions, height restrictions, all of that. They're not insurmountable. They may be, but they're not automatically insurmountable. You just, first of all,
I think that would be the trick. That would be the trick, would be knowing which things can be remedied and which things absolutely cannot be overseen. It's a deal breaker. What's a deal? Some things are deal breakers, some aren't.
Sure.
JT, I wanted to ask you a question. Well, you had a little bit of a, real estate background, as in you sold residential to begin with a long time ago. I say a long time ago. You're not old enough to have a long time ago, but a while back. Mm-hmm. And is that kind of what you would see people coming into development? Would that be the type of background that someone would have?
It's one of them. I've seen all kinds of types get into development, commercial real estate development. I mean, I've seen bankers get into it. They guys who lent money on commercial deals saw how much their clients were taking home at the end of the day. They wanted a piece of that, so they started trying to figure out how they could do it.
Yep.
We've seen attorneys who've helped their clients overcome huge problems on these deals and get them across the line and see what their clients take home. And a lot of them, I will say the majority of them I see are people with a real estate agency or brokerage background. And that's just because they make all the connections. They're out there wheeling and dealing every day. I would say a large majority of them come from some sort of real estate agency or brokerage background, but people of all types come into commercial real estate development. Not all of them succeed, but people of all types do get into it.
Well, speaking of types, if someone were looking to get into what types of development are there? I mean, I've heard y'all talk about, and y'all have to speak to me like I'm a 5-year-old, but triple net, tell me what's best to start with. Is there something that you should cut your teeth on? There you go.
Well, yeah, I mean, how much time you got? But there's all kinds of stuff. You've got small time developers who'll do dollar stores here and there that do triple net lease developments, and triple net just means a tenant leases a building and some property from you as a landlord. You go out, you find some land, you present them with a budget. They say, yes, this looks good. It has a rent and a lease rate on it. You build the building, they occupy it, they start paying you rent. You flip it to somebody who wants to be just what we call a mailbox investor. Somebody who triple net means the tenant of that property takes care of the maintenance, taxes, and the insurance. So the landlord basically has no responsibility once it's built.
That's why you call it mailbox money. The money just comes in the mailbox and
they
you
get a rent
out.
check every month. They don't have to do any work. Now that's not entirely true. Eventually there's stuff that happens where a landlord has some responsibility, but so you've got those types of developers. You've got people who do what we call multi-residential. Those are apartment, duplex, quadplex builders. Those are guys who go out and they find big acres of land and they build a bunch of apartments, or they build a bunch of duplexes, quadplexes. You've got slumlords. They go and invest in kind of older properties, a bunch of them, and they rent them out for monthly income. You've got huge skyrise developers that you've got, over $100 million in Ben. We had a comment. Ben said he was a slumlord.
That was me.
You've got huge skyrise developers like in New York City who build $100 million, $300 million projects.
Did you mention large shopping centers, malls?
You've got those shopping centers.
But which one would you recommend for someone that would have the fewer moving parts, that say that this was their first development deal? Which type?
If I was that type, I'd say your best bet to get into is, for me, if you're just starting out, you're young. You kind of start out kind of like Benjamin did. I call it a slumlord, but you get into starting slow with maybe some residential stuff. You buy a house here or there, fix it up a little bit, rent it out, or flip it. That is a type of real estate development. That's not a high capital, requirement, and can be lucrative if done right. For me and Keith, we took a stab at going the triple net route.
Standalone, single tenant, build a suit, and then sell on the secondary market.
You just said every buzzword there was for a person not to understand. Back that up.
For Keith and
it's
I,
important to know it because it's the most common way that investment dollars are used to help companies grow their businesses all across the country.
Single tenant, Tell me single tenant.
Single tenant
standalone.
means one tenant, one building on one piece of property.
Okay.
It's not a strip center. It's not,
right.
double high rise.
Right. Well, stop right there. Let's throw some names out there. Family Dollar, Advance Auto, Wendy's, who else? I mean, these are examples of single tenant, standalone, triple net, build-to-suit properties. And that's the most common because that's Tractor Supply is one of them. Tractor Supply. Who are some more? I believe Atwood's uses that model. O'Reilly's, AutoZone. It's the way companies grow, and what they do is they understand. And this is just let's call it a 10,000 foot view. There are tons and tons and tons of people with money in this country and overseas that all they're looking for is 6%, 7% triple net lease producing money properties, and they are what we call the secondary market. And developers sell to this pool of money. And with this pool of money, companies like Family Dollar, Dollar General, Advance Auto, that's how they build their growth. They don't build it on owning their own properties. They build it by only assuming that they're going to be tenants in all their properties. And you think about it, it makes sense. Why would you take 20% return on operations money and put it in 6% real estate? Does that make sense? No. That's why that build-to-suit model is so popular, and so many nationally known brand names use that method of growing. That's
varies.
My 10,000 foot view.
It does vary, though. You've got different types of tenants. You've got tenants who, like he said, they just want to rent a building, they want to operate, and they don't want to put out a bunch of capital for real estate, construction, things like that. They're reserving all their capital for expansion and operation growth. And so those are the tenants that Keith and I target, because primarily that was who our clients built for. We had multiple real estate developers who built for Dollar General, Family Dollar, AutoZone, things like that. And so we saw that, and we realized how much work we were putting into it and saw the reward they were getting. Now it's risky. It's risky because anything can go wrong in real estate development. And that's something we can get into later, but it's a high risk, high reward scenario. And, Keith and I saw what we were doing for our clients and thought, man, we'd really like to get in on some of this action and figure out how we could do some of this for ourselves.
And I think once you probably realized what some of the pitfalls were and felt like you had a better handle on what could go wrong, you feel a little safer in doing those deals yourself. Before we get into that too much, though, let's talk about market dynamics. I know y'all have some tools that you use to assess, just things like demographics, traffic count. How do you just get a hold on that? How do you start?
So primarily it's driven by whatever industry you're going into. If you're going to do a dollar store, dollar stores don't have to be in the middle of New York City to generate income. Dollar stores are targeting primarily rural areas. And those companies have what they call seed points. And those seed points are specific dots on a map that if you have a contact in them and establish a contact, they'll send you out to go find a property as close to that seed point as possible. And then some companies, they don't have seed points primarily, but they have what are called site criteria. And they'll have a whole package of what we call demographics, traffic volumes, income areas. So what you have to go do is find a information platform to pull all that from. Some names that people might be familiar are Placer AI, Taz. What are some other ones, Keith? Those are just two big names that I'm familiar with. We use Placer AI where we work to look at competition and traffic traffic of our customers, where they're going to, where they go during the day. When they leave our place, where do they go after that? And if they come to our place, where were they going before? Where are they primarily living? Placer AI uses geofencing to track cell phone data to understand where the clients are coming from.
Wow.
And it also has traffic volumes. You can get free information like that, mostly from Google. Google can give you a semi-good free understanding of an area generally, but if you want real-time data, like if you need to produce, if your client says, I want to be in a minimum 60K a year mean average income, I want to be on a 40,000 vehicle per day road, you've got to be able to go pull that information from some of these platforms that are paid for platforms to be able to pinpoint this property is in front of a 40,000, vehicle per day road. And within a 1 or 3 mile radius, there's 100,000 people that live within 3 miles, and the average income is $80,000. Well, to a lot of tenants, that's a good income. And that's a good that's a lot of traffic. So there's different tools out there that are all information platforms. Placer AI is one of the biggest ones, or Placer IO. I say AI, sorry. Placer IO is one of the biggest ones, and it's not cheap, but it can tell you how long somebody's been wearing their underwear.
But wow, wow, yeah.
So I'll just finish with this. If you have a client who's data driven, it's important to pay for tools like that, because you're bringing your client to the dance in some of these places, and you want to make sure it's safe for them to be at that dance. And
you've got to have things. You've got to be considering things like market saturation. I mean, you don't want to build this one when your competitor's right there necessarily. I mean, that's got to be part of your, data research, doesn't it? I mean, all that would be a platform like that. So,
even a Google search does that from time to time.
You were going to show us. Were you going to show us some?
Yeah, I have what I have pulled up was like one of the tools that's very cheap for someone to get that can help very easily is called LandGlide, or Report All USA. It's an overlay on your Google Earth. And what this does is just very generically shows you property lines. They may not always be accurate, but this is from Report All USA, and it's just a download file that you pay $250 a year for. And I can go to any piece of property that's got accurate county records and deed records, that I can go to a piece of property and I can see kind of where property lines are. I can pull up who owns that property. I can get their address. I can, this links out to a CAD record that shows me more information. This is just one tool that's real cheap for $250 a year. I can get this integrated into my Google Earth system, and I can review a lot about a piece of property with something just as simple as a tool like this. If I was being real cheap and I wanted to find out vehicles, I'd go to like the Texas Department of Transportation, and I'd try to find out how many vehicles per day the TxDOT shows up on their GIS maps, how many vehicles per day are in front of this property. And then I can kind of do some averaging with a quick Google search on how many people are in this area and kind of what's the average income. This tool also allows me to kind of take a street view and start looking at a site. I can see I got a fire hydrant here. I've got, probably I'm looking for manholes. Are there some sewer manholes around here? Now this is Lubbock, so they don't have storm drains. That's all sheet flows into the street, but I would be looking for any kind of storm sewer. I'd be looking for culverts. This is just a simple tool that's not very expensive that I can use to evaluate a property far away.
And don't.
So you actually have to use a little common sense every now and then, huh?
Well, that's part of what I was fixing to mention. There is a simple tool like this can get you started on analyzing a piece of property. It's amazing what you can find out by having the ability to see, and people need to understand what this particular tool JT's referring to. it comes in the form of Land Glide, also what we call Google Earth Pro. These lot lines are right 99.99% of the time. As many times as we've had people try to challenge us on what these things have shown us, and we say, well, this is what the tax assessor's office is showing. Well, that's not right. That's not right. Well, turns out, yeah, it was pretty much right when we finally got a surveyor, something like that. So, I mean, with a tool like this, you can check driveways. You can tell if a driveway is split, if the lot line runs down the middle of the driveway, if a property doesn't have its own driveway, but it's having to use a driveway on the property next to it. All this is preliminary stuff that's, like you said, with just some common sense, you can learn a lot about a piece of property with just a very, very inexpensive tool like this.
Yeah, I can see that. That's
So-
that's amazing.
This is $250 a year, or you can get Land Glide on your phone. If you're traveling a lot, you're not at your computer all the time. Land Glide's a mobile app. It's like $10 a month.
We're not sponsored by Land Glide, by the way.
There's multiple platforms out. You could even go buy you could get a hunting app on your phone for free, and it'll help pull up some property records.
That's true.
This just goes a little more in depth with some extra information. But a buddy of mine, a tip that a buddy of mine who's in the development realm told me, he said he went and got his private investigator license. And a private investigator has a database from like the Department of Homeland Security. He can go in and find people's phone numbers.
Wow.
And that's pretty powerful. That's a pretty powerful asset to have in a commercial real estate setting, because if you can get a hold of somebody, you can make a deal happen.
It's so true. That is so true. I would have never thought of that. That's genius. That's genius.
Well, and what you have and what JT had pulled up there is property that's already developed. You know, a lot of times you're trying to look at property that's at the edge of urban areas where development is still yet to come. And that's where lot lines are very important, to already know what you're talking about, what kind of potential issues might be there. And all of this information is what you can arm yourself with before you ever approach the property owner to see if he's interested in selling. And you need to understand this, our listeners and viewers, understand this. There's so much property out there that's bought and sold. Well, let me say it's a little better. There's so much property out there that is sold by people who had no idea they even wanted to sell it. That's done all the time. People are cold approached by people who say, who have already studied the property and said, man, I believe I can really do something with that property. The landowner might have inherited it, might have got it in a divorce. I mean, there's 10 million ways the owner could have come into the ownership of that property and has no idea what to do with it. You know, and basically has no ideas. He doesn't even know where to start. And that's why somebody who's in the business can look at the property and start running over potential users of that property, and then using the cheapest tools out there can come up with at least an interesting possibility and approach that landowner, and I'll be darned. A year later, deals made, properties closed, and construction started on property that the owner wasn't even thinking he was going to sell it.
So you're saying you don't have to just ride the roads and look for sale signs?
No, you do not. You do not.
I think Keith's a big purporter of getting on Google Earth and looking at intersections, and then kind of slowly working his way out from big intersections, trying to find the nearest undeveloped dirt. I mean, there's also, in this industry, you've also got to get creative. You're not going to find bare dirt everywhere that your client wants to go. And so if you want to make a deal happen, sometimes you got to innovate. We've done it. We've taken a Applebee's and turned it into a car wash. We turned an old Pepe's restaurant in Brownsville, Texas, Brownsville, Texas, into a car wash. You got to be able to think outside the box. Not the urban areas are tight and dirt is high. And if you can find something that's already kind of got good bones and you can turn it into something that you need to turn it into, deals can be made.
Absolutely. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I could see that.
Well, but let's go back to where we were at the beginning of the show, though. What about the person who he's heard the terms, he knows, so and so's made a lot of money in commercial real estate, and he has not got a clue how they did it. Well, I told somebody just the other day, well, if you know somebody that's already in the business, you're already perceiving them as successful. How many times have you had lunch with them?
Mm-hmm.
Do you go to church with them? Do your kids play soccer on the same team? That is the best way you can start. You are not ready to jump off into something like this without teaming up with somebody who's already learned a lot of the wrong ways to do this.
That's good advice. That's good advice.
Networking. Yeah.
Go ahead. What, JP?
No, I was just going to say networking is probably one of the most important things you can do in this industry. Knowing somebody that knows somebody. Don't ever be afraid to ask if you know someone that I can talk to, or have you ever seen this? Talk with people who are in the industry. If you're looking to get into it, 9 times out of 10, they're probably willing to share some information with you, so long as you're not competing with them.
Yeah, that's the truth. That is the truth. Yeah, that kind of brings you to, there are going to be a lot of people networking that you're going to have to work with. I know that I'm pretty sure every time, I may be wrong, but you got to have a good architect, don't you? I mean, in most cases, are you working with architects, and who else what other people would you have to be contracted with?
Before you got to that stage, that is, and it depends on the type of development you're doing. Before you got to that stage, it's like he said, we need to make sure we can do what we want to do on this property. That's the due diligence phase, as we call it. That's looking at the dirt, that's getting inspections, that's getting reports, environmental surveys, looking at it from all angles, just to say, is there anything that would keep us from doing this? And
so that kind of brings us to zoning, doesn't it? Zoning issues.
Yes.
Okay.
So you usually have what we call a civil engineer involved on the front end of the project, who kind of helps you draw a little concept plan that says, hey, I think we could fit this on here. It just, here's a 2D drawing showing the layout we could do. And then he'll also help you kind of on the front end start doing what we call investigation research, site investigation research. And they'll look at zoning, they'll make phone calls to the municipalities, and this is stuff you can do yourself. You want to learn about the zoning, you want to learn what kind of codes you're going to be adhering to. You want to know about utilities, you want to know about impact fees. Impact fees are fees that you pay municipalities to tie into their water, sewer. You want to do as much research as you can before you get into big money like design. It depends on how fast you want to go, but when you start getting engineers involved, that's when you start paying big bucks. Because you're paying a team of people to conceptually build this thing from the ground up. And they have to do a lot of code research. They have to do a lot of meetings with the cities. They have to do a lot of back and forth with each other, coordinating their plans. That's the design aspect of it.
Lord.
Keith is thinking.
You got some insight.
Well, people need to understand that these are human beings that work in the city planning and zoning departments, and they have.
Are you sure? Some of them, I'm not sure.
Some of them.
Well, my point simply is you're not only dealing with a book containing codes and regulations, you're dealing with human beings,
mm-hmm.
and there are personalities there, and when you are submitting these plans and what you want to do to the city and asking them to give you feedback, if they're sold on your project and they would really love to see your XYZ come to town, well then, they will help you all they can. But then when you start getting, all the different departments involved, the fire department, the water department, the engineering department, name some more, JT.
Well, I know that y'all have been surprised before to show up to a meeting and thinking you were just going to have a nice little meeting, and they were going to be so excited and embrace the project, and they've got the torches out. They're ready to set you on fire when you get there, and you didn't see it coming.
Yeah, that's a whole nother ball game when you get into public hearings. That's all part of it. The front end process is really like just a lot of investigation. Spend money. If there's any advice we could give you, do not be afraid to spend money to investigate the property. You would rather spend $50,000 understanding if you can do the project than spending $7 million and getting a cease and desist order because you had a restriction against a burger joint from the neighboring property from 50 years ago.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. Isn't that the truth?
Well,
isn't that the truth?
The whole reason I was chuckling a while ago is the fact that people need to understand that, it's in many cases, it's a multi-round process. You submit your stuff, you get plans, the plan, the comments, where the fire marshal wants to see certain things. Well, that may mean that the approval you already got from landscaping department, you're going to have to make them mad because you got to change that because of how you have to put your driveway to satisfy the fire marshal. And so that's why it's so. That's exactly right. It's not only a balancing act; it's a tightrope walking act. And you don't need to think that you, Mr. Rookie, Mr. Neophyte, Mr. Never done this before, is going to go it alone and do it. Now, if you're trying to stick a Dollar General in the middle of nowhere, they're probably glad to see any construction going on. They're glad to see it. What little economy the workforce can bring, and the construction money that could come to a little community. They're tickled to death. They'll agree to anything. But that's not what you find in the urban setting.
We had a comment pop up just a minute ago from Patricia Jarman. She works with us at our office, and we are dealing with some headaches over in the engineering department, aren't we, Patricia? What you got into just a second ago about them coming out with the pitchforks. When you do your front end investigations, there's so many things you've got to look at. It can be very overwhelming. Just before I even start getting into the design aspect of a property, we're looking at probably 50 to 100 pages of information and documents, and all of it is just about the property. It's not even, you haven't even gotten into the nitty gritty on dealing with the city on design yet. This is all front end work, but you got to determine, do you have, does your client need 3-phase power? Well, does that property already have 3-phase power, or has it got to be run from a half a mile away? Mm-hmm. These are things that you can spend a little bit of money on and get answers to before you start spending any big money. And you need these cheap answers as accurate as possible, but you need as many of those cheap answers as you can get, because it's like JT said a while ago, when you start putting those architects to work and you start putting those engineers to work, those bills add up fast. And there's so much you can learn. You can learn about the property using cheap means.
I remember the first time I ever heard the term curb cut. I bet people don't know what a curb cut is. Oh, yeah. Explain what a curb cut is, JT, and why it could cause you a major headache.
Well, there's multiple definitions, believe it or not. But the general definition is where you access the property from the public right of way. I can show you. This is a curb cut right here. Let me share this. This right here is a curb cut. This is where you access your private property from the public right of way. Now, in this case, this is probably a city controlled road. So the city controls where and how you're going to put your curb cut. Now, if I own this property down here, this is the new freeway loop going around Lubbock that they're putting in. This property here is right along the edge of Texas Department of Transportation right away. Well, the Texas Department of Transportation controls where my access goes here. These are curb cuts off of the highway that these people have for their properties. So curb cut has many definitions. Some are controlled by city, some are controlled by state. Some of them cross federal waterways that have to have approval from the Bureau of Reclamation to build an access drive across them. Some of them are shared driveways. I could probably find a shared one right up here at this new development going in. This is a brand new development for a big shopping center going in. They've got a few curb cuts, but they've got other tenants and out parcels that are being subdivided here.
They got multiple curb cuts on one road, but the busier road, you can see they limited
to one.
The access for the whole project to one. And that's very, very common. And people need to understand that if I buy a piece of commercial property along a city or state controlled public road, I am not guaranteed that I will have my curb cut, my own private curb cut. There are any number of reasons why. They may tell you, you have got to deal with the adjoining landowner, and we want you and the adjoining landowner to come up with a plan. There you go.
This is a gas station on the corner.
What if the adjoining landowner's not a nice person?
Can't help it.
Well, you do have. I'll say this: you've got rights as an owner of your property that you can't be denied. In this instance, it looks like the owner of this land probably was the same owner of this land at one time, and they sold it to this gas station. And this gas station was going in for permitting. The city said, well, since your property owner still owns both of these, we'd like you to have one access here because this is a busy, there's 40,000 cars a day on this intersection.
JT, can you zoom in any closer? Because there's a very important point about that. See how that property line lies?
Goes right down the middle?
Yeah.
Yep.
See, the curb cut actually covers two pieces of property.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what JT's, what lays the foundation of what JT's talking about.
So this guy had to establish a cross access easement between the two properties so that these guys could make use of this and he could make use of this. And I guarantee you, since they left this cut out, I'm going to bet $10 that there's probably going to be an access point here for this property in the future that they get to use this drive and this drive, and they all have cross access with each other.
And
y'all have done this so much. Y'all see things that we don't see. I would have never seen that in a million years, but it's crystal clear when you say that.
This is a big grocery chain with a little gas station in it. They've built a bunch of shops and stuff here. This is now an Abbott's Custard. This was an access easement that was established and platted. And this group, when they platted this property off, was made by the city to build this road. They wanted it built as part of the infrastructure with the replat. So if I'm going to buy this piece of property, I can look at this and say, okay, I can really only put a building back here. This is going to be a cross access for this property, and my property. And this is the only place I'm going to be able to put a building. After you've done this enough, you can look at stuff like that and say, I can already tell you the flow of traffic. I can already see where I've got easements. I can already see where I'm going to have shared stuff with other property owners.
And something where a Wendy's or an AutoZone may go, you'll never put a Chick-fil-A there because Chick-fil-A has such high traffic volumes that most cities require larger footprints for the entire Chick-fil-A project. And so
let's talk about a couple. Go ahead, Key. I'm sorry.
Well,
with.
that the point. What I'm trying to do is drill down to the concept of usable dirt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When when all the things, and this is what people need to understand when when you have front setback, back setback, side setbacks, easements, uh, city required or county required shared driveways and things like that, you still have to know what you're going to end up with as usable dirt. What will actually be left, and how will it afford um, layout ability for your engineer to put an AutoZone on it, or to put a Dollar General on it, or to put a Tractor Supply on it. How much usable dirt is what is left after you take out all those things that are required just to have a development there?
Well, how do you plan for the risk of, environmental concerns, for lack of a better word? This has to be coming up, in certain properties.
Well,
And
hang on. You have to assume that someone knows that you have to do that kind of research. Someone new to this may not know they have to go, that you actually have to research environmental things, data for a piece of property, or you can't get funding.
wow,
Anyone new to this that's never done this before, a key piece of information: learn what your banks require at a very early stage.
that's a good point.
All of this is contingent on you being able to get financing, whether that's private equity, whether that's big corporation money, whether that's a lender from a bank. A good start would be to go and start talking to some of your bank friends and say, hey, I'm getting into commercial real estate. What are some things that I should be looking for, or things that I should be doing that would help me get funding from you? That would be a huge start for somebody just freshly getting into development.
That's very good advice. Very good advice.
Every bank, every lender of any type, whether it's a bank or a savings and loan or an insurance company or a private equity group, they're going to have a list. Now, some elements on that list are going to be the same for all of them, and a phase one environmental survey is going to be one of them. Okay.
Mhm.
And
So
what is
there's-
that?
You got to
What is that at a very
explain.
high
You got to
level?
explain that just a second. Say
Well, let me
phase.
finish making the point, though.
Okay.
The lenders, there are going to be certain elements that they're all going to want to have. Okay, it's going to be on their list, and then you will start talking to particular banks. A particular real estate committee at one bank may want to see a little more of this or a little less of that. That varies from bank to bank, but there's a certain list every one of them are going to want to see, but
Mhm.
before they even start talking to you.
And a phase one, what? Or phase two?
It's called a phase one ESA. It's I think it stands for environmental survey assessment, site assessment.
So you're actually looking at the dirt and what's lying
At that
beneath the
level,
surface.
At that level, no. What you're looking at is the public record. What does the state environmental? Every state has a Department of Environmental Quality, and all property that has had any development on it at all probably already has a record. Um, uh,
So I know.
of things that have been filed with it. Now, part of it is at least a surface inspection. Okay.
Mhm.
But the surface inspection can be easily fooled. The records, the phase one, it's the records that are the most important for that environmental engineer to go dig through the public records. Did it have underground gasoline tanks?
That's what I was going to ask about. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the single most important thing that will be revealed by phase one.
What about
Go
like
ahead, Joe.
wildlife? Don't you run into wildlife issues every now and
Oh, yeah.
then with groups?
You ever
Yeah.
seen prairie dog mitigation here in West Texas or New Mexico? Prairie dogs are pretty prevalent. You can go to the Walmart down the road here and you see prairie dogs in all of the undeveloped land. Well, part of what you have to do when you go to develop that land is do prairie dog mitigation. Now, it may sound cruel to some people, but what they do is they take these vacuums and they go out there and they suck them up out of the hole and relocate them. Not Jimmy in the backyard with a 22 doing mitigation. They have a process for pulling them out and relocating them. We have a project over in Arizona. I was looking at our budget today, and one of the line items said endangered species, $0. And I thought, I never thought about that. Are we doing any research into endangered species in these areas that we're going? Well, I started looking, and this was in a place called Washuka, Arizona. And I looked up endangered species near Washuka, Arizona. And apparently there is something called the Washuka water. It's a type of carrot. The Washuka water umbral. And like umbrella, but only umbral. And it is a type of carrot that grows in waterways, and it is a protected, endangered type of plant.
Oh my gosh.
Luckily, we don't have any waterways on the property we're looking at, but that's just the type of thing you've got to expect. We learn something new every single day on every single piece of property we work on. No two pieces of property are the same.
You have got to be able to adapt.
You have to be able to adapt, and you always have to be willing to learn and grow. You can't.
And I would imagine each state is different, isn't it? Yeah.
Each state's different. I learned for a project in Wisconsin the other day, there's statute rules about condominiums, and condominiums are a type of like master development, but they're called condominiums up there. That certain drawings are state statute, or there are state statutes governing those documents. You can't just get like an approval to do something. You have to physically go and change the entire map for the development. That's why it's important, I think, for you to have local counsel in places that you're going, local real estate oriented, experienced counsel, because we would have never known. I would have never known if I hadn't just. I've done this for since 2016, and today was the first day I even thought to think about looking up an endangered species. In West Texas, they've got like horny toads are a protected species.
We have those at our house.
They've got this type of turtle in Arizona that's a protected species.
Well, let's go back to the original premise, and that is, if you're going to be a slumlord, you're not taking all that much risk to spend $30,000 on an old beat up house that you're going to put, another 10 into and make it livable and try to rent it out as a slumlord. But if you're going to be spending $1 million for a piece of property, or $1.5 million or $2 million, and that's just the dirt to try to be a developer for a well-known national tenant, that's a lot of money. And that's a lot of risk to know that you have met every burden. You have satisfied everybody. But somebody forgot to ask about the endangered species. And come to find out, you will never put a Chick-fil-A on that property. You will never put an AutoZone on that $1.5 million piece of property that you were going to make some really nice triple net mailbox money off of. But it'll never happen. But you've already spent the $1.5 million.
And having somebody local on your team for that would be another key point, I think, to give to somebody for their first few deals is wherever you're working, try to get some local people involved to help you with that project because they've been through it.
They're going to know also like aesthetics. There are so many places that have signage, height restrictions, and you have to have so much landscaping done to offset the concrete. I don't know, y'all know more about it than I do, but your local person would there again be excellent.
Because they've already made the mistake and gone through it, and they know the people there. They know the contacts. Somebody local has lived there their whole life, worked in the commercial real estate there their whole life. They know the county commissioners. They know the city council people. They can give you an introduction. They can get you to the people who are decision makers and approving or disapproving your deal. They've lived it because they were there. That would be another key takeaway on your first couple of deals. Get local people to help you out, and then have somebody local on your team.
Yeah, do not try to be the Lone Ranger, not on your first deal.
We have a whole nother page that we wanted to get to, but we're already at an hour. I think we need to do this again sometime rather than run through it. And I want y'all to just give some parting encouraging advice, because this all sounds very doom and gloom, very intimidating.
I was getting to the point where I was fixing. Now, guys, don't just take all this as doom and gloom, but it can be a very rewarding industry, and you'll meet a lot of cool people. You'll learn a lot. You'll never be bored. That's a big thing for, I think, Keith and I is, man, we're not bored at all. Everything is a challenge. Everything is new. There's always something to overcome, even if it's small. We've got success stories. There are horror stories, but there are success stories. Keith and I, we worked in the legal space for a long time for several developers. We got into it ourselves down in Florida. We have two of our own projects in the works right now. We pennied and dimed. We synergized with other individuals. We've outfitted our group with people who are in the finance realm. We've outfitted our group with people who are in the construction realm. And so you can't do it alone. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You're going to get told no, but you're going to get 100 no's before you get a yes. And when you finally get that first yes, it's going to be rewarding, and you're going to be able to take something home and be proud of.
Like catching that big fish after you've been throwing back the little ones, or not catching anything at all. You get hooked, I think. So, Keith, you got any last parting words of advice that aren't too doomy and gloomy?
I do. JT's right on point. I'm going to shout out to somebody by name, Jimmy Howell, client and a longtime friend. He once said, and he might have gotten it from somebody else, who knows? But when I heard him say it, he made a very big impression on me. And that is, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it and nobody would be making any money.
That's right.
I had that on my list to say, and I wasn't going to mention him by name, but I'm glad you did.
I couldn't help it. I mean, I've never that because, at the time we were working on something that was very difficult, but it's like JT said, commercial real estate, the right segment of the commercial real estate industry definitely operates on the risk and reward system. And the greater the risk you're willing to take and apply your efforts, you can apply a ton of effort. You can apply a ton of money. And it turned out to hey, we got to cut our losses, cancel the contract, hand this property back, and let's go try to find another piece of property. But at the end of the day, from all your efforts, all your resources having been spent, the big reward comes to those who are willing to take the risk. It's the risk and reward system. And that particular time, we were working on something that was so tough, we weren't even sure we're going to be successful in what we were trying to do, but it turned out we were. And I never forgot it when I was in his office and I was, man, it just doesn't have to, why does it have to be this hard? And he said, Keith, let me tell you, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it and nobody would be making any money. That was 20 something years ago and I never forgot it.
But that's why we're here. We would love to answer any questions, discuss this. If you've got questions, leave them in the comment section. Keith's done a great job with some folks from work, some young people from work, taking them out to lunch, and we just talk about this stuff. They've got a lot of questions. They're brilliant minds. They take some of that and they apply it, and they're all young men and women. They've got growing families, and they'll soak it up. And we would love to share what we've learned and help you understand the do's and don'ts of what we've experienced over the years working for many developers and ourselves. And the daily grind is the gift. And if I had anything else to say is don't forget to give it to God too. You can't do it by yourself. You've got to give it up to God. Give him the glory, because the gift is the grind. So.
Oh yeah.
I love that.
And I can tell you this, don't try to go it alone. Team up with people who are already in the business, that already have some experience, and soak up what you can. Be humble, be willing to learn, be willing to put in work. You may not have the money, but you may have skills and contacts. All that's valuable. All that's worth something to your group. So don't.
Keith and I were told no probably 30, 40 times before we finally landed our first client for our own development. We were told no probably 12, 15 times before we got someone to privately invest in us. We were told no by several people we knew who we asked to partner with us to help make the deal come to fruition before we finally landed on a financial partner and a construction partner. So again, don't be afraid.
Yeah, those are
no.
all things I'd like for y'all to talk about again next time,
Okay.
And I think if people will just have a teachable spirit and come back, y'all have a lot to share.
Sure.
All right. We've had fun.
We could take up several months for this.
Yeah.
We're still learning every day.
That's right.
Before let me tell you the war stories.
We want to hear some next time.
Oh yeah. Let me tell you, at the end of the day, you're going, well, that makes perfect sense. But if you hadn't gone through it, if you didn't see it, if you didn't recognize it, but after you've experienced, you go, well, that wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it was. That made perfect sense. I don't know why somebody couldn't have thought of that before. And that happens all the time in this business.
Happened to me today.
Happens all the time. Yep. Well, look, I want to remind everybody, the next 2 weeks, we've got some really interesting people to be our guests coming up. We want you to plan on next Thursday and the Thursday after that. We've had fun tonight, and we're going to regroup and do this again. Please like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate everybody's support, all you nobodies out there. And we're going to say goodnight. Say goodnight, Grayson.
Special thanks to our moderator tonight for keeping us on heel.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Good night. Love y'all.
Good night. Love
everybody.
you too.